It takes one person to stand up, just hoping that another person will. And if you don't want to be that first person, if you sit down because no one is standing up, nobody will stand up. Maybe you are the person who is supposed to ignite the change and stand up. And you must take that opportunity when you feel that it is time. You must stand up and hope that another person will stand up. And it takes one person to stand up, for 10 to eventually stand up, for millions to stand up, and for us to change the world. I am Denis Ndeloh, Cameroonian primatologist, and I share hope.
Welcome to I Share Hope, the podcast where world leaders share their real stories of hope and how you can use actionable hope to start changing your life today. And now, here's your host, Chris Williams.
Hi, Chris.
Dennis, it's good to talk to you. How are you today?
I'm doing very good, thank you. What about you?
I'm doing great.
Okay.
Thank you for your time. So, where are you today?
I am in Gatineau in Canada.
In Canada?
Yes.
No kidding. What are you doing in Canada? Do you spend a lot of time in Canada?
Yes. In the past 1 year, yes.
Okay, and well, I should stop. That's going to be great for the interview. So I should stop there. Let me let me back up. I don't want anybody to miss this. So, I want to make sure that you understand the flow of the interview. So you can you hear me okay right now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. I want to make sure you understand the flow of the interview, so you know exactly where I'm going with this.
Okay.
We ask all the guests the same 5 questions about hope, and I think you actually probably have access to that document that walks through the questions when you booked the interview.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll follow that script pretty straightforward, and we just ask the questions. You answer them however you want, and your perspective as an ecologist and a researcher in your field is very unique, and that's what we're looking for, because there's a lot of ways people bring hope to the communities and the planet, and you're doing something that very, very few people in the world get to do. And I know it'll be fun to hear your background. Question 3 is a little bit more just about you. A lot of these, obviously, all the questions are about you, not just the research you do, but people that connect to the science that you're in and the involvement you have with the planet, they love hearing the real life stories behind the people who are actually making such a big impact on our world. So after the 5th question, we take a quick little break. I'll ask you some quotes about, helping you introduce your own episode, and then at the end of that, we'll ask any random questions I think of that might be of interest to the listeners. And we ultimately take this, we share it online, we do a transcription, and we share the audio. And we haven't figured out how to use the video yet, but I want to make sure if people on YouTube want to connect to learning more about hope, that they get to see this stuff too. So there's people in over 30 countries now reading and listening to these interviews. So it's really cool how many people are engaged all over the globe.
Wow.
Yeah. So thank you for your time. All right, now, before we jump in, tell me to make sure I want to get your name exactly right. How do I pronounce your name?
So it's Dennis.
I got that
Ndeloh.
part. Okay. Ndeloh?
Ndeloh.
Ndeloh,
yes.
So do you pronounce the N?
Yes.
Okay. So
De.
Ndeloh.
How's the N? So it's not Ndeloh, it's Ndeloh.
Ndeloh.
Yes.
Ndeloh. Dennis Ndeloh.
Yes.
I love it. That's great.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Dennis Ndeloh, this is great to have you with us today. Now, you're a researcher of the great apes, for lack of a better way to say that. And I may be saying that wrong. I know there's so many subsets here, but you have done research on the most endangered group of gorillas that are on the planet. You have your Ph.D. in the world that you're involved in, this ecology world, and in particular the study of these creatures. You've been all over the world speaking, and you actually grew up in an area in I think in Africa that had a large population of these animals, and your father was actually very involved, if I'm not mistaken, there in providing for his family in a healthier, more sustainable way, the way people used to work with these animals and hunt them. Dennis, hang on just a second. I'm gonna start that over again. I'm heading direction I don't want to go. I don't want people to question, oh no, were they doing the wrong thing? So all right, let's start this back at the
Okay.
beginning and
Yeah, no problem.
make sure I don't make a mess of this, and then you can
Yeah.
jump in there and tell us more about yourself in a second.
Okay.
All right. So, let me just get here. Denis Ndeloh, you've been so gracious to share your time with us today, and you grew up in Cameroon, and you've been involved with the study of great apes around the world, and you've actually spent over a decade of your time working with the most endangered group of those awesome animals, the Cross River gorillas, if I'm not mistaken. I've read some
Yeah.
about them, and it's amazing. The study you've done and just the creatures themselves are just awesome. You got your Ph.D. A few years back, and you've been educated all over the globe. You've spoken all over the world, and you're doing an amazing work to bring a lot of awareness and a lot of health to the animals themselves, and also to the humans that get to interact with these awesome creatures. So tell me a little more about what are you doing today? Where are you? What are you doing right now? And then we'll get into the questions.
Okay. Thank you, Chris, for having me. And I want to give a big shout out to your listeners for letting me inspire them today. I describe myself as a family person who is very passionate about nature, about animals, and also who is very, very passionate about gorillas, of course. Um, Today, I am talking from Gatineau, Quebec. I'm in Quebec in the hope of pursuing a postdoctoral study on the Cross River gorillas. In this study, I will be looking into the parasites, the common parasites of Cross River gorillas and humans that live in the same ecosystem, and trying to establish if factors such as human disturbance influence the parasites infections of Cross River gorillas and vice versa, and with the hope of making recommendations that can help not only conserve the animals but also improve the health situation of the people that live in the forest adjacent communities.
That's so you're in Canada doing more research and more study. That's you've spent a lot of years in the classroom and in the jungle.
Yeah.
So you grew up around these animals, right?
Yeah.
What was it like growing up? I mean, were you in a jungle area, literally?
Well, I grew up in one of the most remote places in Africa. Our house, where I spent the first 19 years of my life, is just some 40 or so kilometers from the nearest Cross River gorilla habitat. And actually, it was very difficult growing up. I mean, with parents that depended on agriculture and hunting to feed their families with many children. We were 13 of us in total. My father had 2 wives and 13 children in total. And it was a challenge for him to even educate us. I mean, I didn't learn a word in English until I was 7 years old or something. But when we eventually got the opportunity to study, I was fascinated by the stories that my father told me about the animals in the forest, those that he hunted. These animals, his encounters with them, living or dying, as I usually refer to it. He tells us of animals that will charge him. He tells us of animals that will stalk him. And he tells us of animals that were dangerous, those that were easy to catch, and so on. And one particular story that piqued my interest was my father's recollection of an encounter he had with a chimpanzee. That was my first time knowing about chimpanzees. I didn't know about chimpanzees before. I just saw my father bring home some monkeys, and monkeys were monkeys, you know. And he told me this chimpanzee stalked him, intentionally stalked him, and preventing him from moving through the forest, and would make a lot of noise, and would stand up erect, and would move around, and would shake trees, and make a lot of hooting sounds. And my father said, for the first time, he was afraid being in the forest. And when he eventually found a way to go past the chimpanzee, actually what he did was he also started backing like the chimpanzee. The same thing that the chimpanzee was doing, he did the same thing. I mean, out of confusion, not knowing what to do to send the animals away, because he was not having a gun. He actually had set wire snares in the forest. He actually didn't hunt with a gun. So he could not defend himself. But he said, okay, if I do the same thing the animal is doing, but maybe do it more ferociously, like be more aggressive about it, I may dominate. And that helped him. But when on his return, the chimpanzee had come to the same place and was waiting for him. So he had to look for a different way to go across a certain river to come home that day. And that story, to me, even as I narrate it today, remains very inspirational because it immediately set up something in me. Why would a chimpanzee stalk a human? Or how are they able to walk, to stand upright and behave like humans? Why would a chimpanzee come back and wait for him again? So I was thinking, and this reinforces stories of myth. When you grow up in the dark corners of the world, there are stories about totems, there's stories about witchcraft, about myth, about people transforming into other animals. So I wanted to know, I immediately, at the age of 9 or 10, immediately knew that I had to learn more. I wanted to know more about these animals. And this is what my main inspiration to study the great apes.
Well, you've accomplished your goal. You know more than most people on the planet know. That's great. Sure. Well, let's go after the 5 questions of hope. I'm just as curious as can be about where we'll end up here. So, question 1: what's your definition or your favorite quote about hope? How do you define hope?
To me, hope is a belief that a better day will come. That if you try harder, adversity will not prevail. As I can say that if you don't hope, how can you expect? If you don't hope, how can you desire? How can you even plan? How can you wish? So you need hope to endure the unyielding patience that is sometimes required to attain your goals. Because when you try and it's not working, if you do not have hope, you're going to give up. And hope is that thing that makes you not give up in life. So my definition of hope is, it comes back to a belief or that thing that makes you want to overcome, that makes you know that at the end of the tunnel there is light.
Good definition and explanation there. Wow. I'm going to go back and listen to that again once we're done talking, just to write that down, because that's a really good way to explain hope. Thank you. So with that definition and that kind of working pattern of hope now, who would you say has shared the most hope with you in life?
I would say 2 people. I would go back to my father. His enduring commitment to the education of his children at a time when most people around him did not think it was worth the risk. With no income, little income, many children, many people just say, teach them how to hunt, teach them how to farm, and they will be okay. But even though he was not educated, even though none of his wives were educated, he believed in something greater. He had heard, he could only have heard from people that education is a good thing. But he believed in it. And his hope that education would translate into a better life has greatly prevailed if you look around his family. So my father will be the very first person that inspires me the most. Second will be Jane Goodall. Jane Goodall, this woman who at the age of 26 left the comfort of her country in London to travel to Tanzania, and equipped with just a binoculars and a notebook, entered into the world of wild chimpanzees. And it is thanks to her unyielding patience and characteristic optimism that we now know most of the things we know about great apes and about chimpanzees. You know, when I got to university in when I was 19 years old, the stories that my father had told me about apes, these man-like creatures that live in the forest not very far from my home, had inspired me, and I was very interested in biological science in high school. But of course, there was never mention of chimpanzees or anything. And when I got to university, I wanted to choose something that is close enough to studying apes. So I enrolled to do environmental sciences. And I was immediately disappointed when I looked at a list of courses, and it was just about pollution, waste management, environmental law, and all of this. And I said, where are the animals? And one day, I went to the school library. The library, of course, in a developing country, the libraries are not equipped. There's not enough, and there's not so much in terms of books. And I picked up a book that was saying that was titled "Reasons for Hope" by Jane Goodall. In this book, Jane was narrating her story, her patience, how long it would take, how much she had to endure, how patient she had to be to see the chimpanzees for the first time. I mean, I love to read this book so much that I even made a copy and hide it under my bed, in the hope that, I will read the pages over and over again as though to find something new. And in those days, with nothing to go for but a book of somebody who has given up so much in order to study these animals, I was inspired. I wanted to be like her, you know? And it is challenging because in my country, if you want to be a primatologist, I think this is it's not only limited to my country. Then you are signing a poverty contract, right? Because you're never going to be rich. You're going to apply for funding all your life. You're going to beg money from people to do the work that you do all your life, because you'll never have anything to go for yourself. And it was okay if you can do computer science, you can go and be a journalist, you easily can find a job. But there was something else that was driving me. What I had read in the book and the stories that my father had taught me was what was driving me. I wanted to go. That was where my heart was. And I was just hoping that something would come out of it. Hope again. In a country where unemployment is at 30%, it is, in some people's view, stupid not to go for the subject that is going to has a greater probability of landing you a job. But due to these inspirations I've mentioned, I could not see myself not doing it. And I kept at it, even though I didn't see how I'm going to get to know primates from that course. But that was the nearest to what my heart desired at the time.
Those are great examples of people sharing hope with you. And two awesome examples, your father and Jane, just such a rich history. Both, it's interesting, Jane left the comforts of a more civilized and comfortable lifestyle to go spend so much time with the apes, and yet your father, on the other side, didn't come from that comfort.
No.
And had a very intimate knowledge with them as well.
Yes.
Just pure proximity and time that both of them took, and have set you on a path that's just awesome to watch.
And that has enriched me so much, because I come from the two worlds. I come from the world of the conservationist, and I come from the world of the poacher. And I understand when people from both worlds will just stay on their own side of the glass of the building and throw stones at each other. I understand the frustration that the hunters are killing the animals. And I understand the frustration of the hunters who say the conservationists are trying to take away what the only thing that they have as a livelihood with no clear alternative. And to me, I think instead of accusing each other, there is a path forward. To me, I think, at least for the apes, the ones that are closely related to us. I mean, if we cannot save apes, what does it say for any other creature in the face of the earth? I think that we can walk through these differences, this divide, through genuine conversations and hoping that people will be transformed, that compassion and empathy would take over. And this has been my approach as I go to communities and I talk to them about apes. I don't go and say, you know what, the forest is threatened, apes are endangered, we have to stop it. But I say, imagine that a young chimpanzee mother who was just giving birth to a baby, when you take out your gun to shoot that chimpanzee, imagine your wife and your daughter. Imagine somebody doing that. And I try to let them know that, like us, chimpanzees have emotions. That, like us, animals can think. Animals do suffer. And they do go through trauma. And when people connect to that, sometimes it's difficult. Sometimes in some societies where traditional belief systems exist, where people believe in the transformative power of animals turning into totems, humans interspecies relationships, as I can say, it is much easier because you could say, look, you guys believe that if a chimpanzee or gorilla totem is killed, somebody would die in the community. So why do we kill them if we don't want people to die? It's much easier. But you're not using the scientific approach, but you're learning from the people because you know the way they think. And this is always, I have said that I'm lucky to have come from two worlds, that the son of a protector, the son of a hunter will become a protector. And if we can replicate this across the planet in everything that we do towards sustainability, I think it will be a better world.
Great pattern. This is a great pattern you're following. Tell me more about you then. Question number 3. When was a time in your life when you've really had a hopeless situation and something where you had to really pull through that was hard? So you're experiencing a lot of success now and you look like you're on top of everything, but you know, that's not always the case. So give us a little bit of background, paint the picture. What's going on for you back there?
Okay. I will quote a series of instances. The most difficult one was, of course, the challenges of growing up. I mean, it was not easy. And just to keep at the North Star, even when you're surrounded by poverty, by everything, the struggle, that was very difficult growing up. But most interesting is, I'll go back to just 3 or 4 years ago, when I was already in the stage of collecting data for my Ph.D. thesis. I can read you, like, if I go to my thesis acknowledgement section, I can read you a few lines that I said, but before I do so, meaning that before I say good things about my supervisors and so on, permit me to reflect on the darkest day of my entire PhD life. The day I questioned the purpose of life in general and the usefulness of academic achievement in particular. I said, the idea to do a PhD in gorilla ecology was born out of a discussion I had with one of my master thesis supervisors during the International Primatology Society Congress in Edinburgh in 2008. In the moments that followed, we both worked very hard to raise the initial funds and to fine-tune the research questions in collaboration with the other supervisor. The fieldwork eventually started in November 2009, and we were all excited about the potential outcome of the study. But barely 8 months into the 2 years project, and on the 29th of June 2010, was my supervisor brutally murdered in her Limbe residence in Cameroon. Her untimely death was devastating in every sense of the word, and there were moments when I did not see how and why the project should continue. This was like one of the stumbling blocks. Like, I had just left the forest after a month of searching and not finding the gorillas. I actually started finding the gorillas, and I knew that somebody is out there waiting for this good news. And as I stepped out to go talk to my supervisor, while I'm seeing the car moving towards the city where she lived, I heard that she was murdered that morning. It was difficult. It was, why should we do this anyway? Why should I trek 10 days repeatedly every day in the forest, wandering in search of animals, when at the end it means nothing? Why should I endure? And at that time, the villagers were having issues with wildlife conservation, and they were threatening us. You wake up one morning and you see a mob of 30 people arrive at your camp wanting to march you out of the forest. They don't want you in their forest. Why should I endure all of this? Hey, there got to be something better out there. Life should not be this tough. And you know, I was surrounded with all of that. And you know what I turned to? I turned to a discussion that I had with Jane Goodall in Belgium when she was visiting. That was before I ever started my PhD. So I asked her that, Dr. Jane, I read in one of your books that there were times when you would go for months and months and you would not see any sign of chimpanzee. There were times when the rains were unbearable. What kept you going at that time? And her response to me was, 1, the unbroken love for nature, and 2, the stubbornness to quit. So when all of these thoughts were going through my mind, when I was like saying that I will not go back to the forest, the project is ended, there can be no way I can go, I can continue with this project, I thought about that. I thought about the stubbornness that you must summon in order to protect these animals. They cannot say thank you. The animals cannot say thank you. But what would the legacy of my supervisor, why would I say my supervisor died if I quit? She wasn't in Africa because she believed not only in the protection of apes, but she believed that we have to nurture the next generation of African primatologists in order to save primates. She believed that we cannot depend on foreigners alone. We must enhance the capacities of the local people if we are going to see any difference. So should I give up on that premise? Should I just be a coward and go away because she's taken away from me? And that was my decision to go back the next week and work even harder and ask even more questions on my data and walk even longer distances per day in search of the animals and to study them. was one of the most difficult decisions that I made. Most difficult encounter, the most challenging circumstances that I came across. There might be others, but this was the one.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense why it would be, particularly from a mentor standpoint. You just had somebody so close to you. Did she get murdered by people who did not want her involved in the conservation effort? Do you know?
No, is still not very sure. We don't know if it was related to robbery or it was related to. It's still not sure, even up to today. And
Okay.
I just stopped asking the question.
Yeah, and I don't want to put blame on anybody. I'm not trying to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's in a part of the world where crime can go, unpunished.
Sure. Yeah.
That's just reality.
I'm so glad you've come through, and I'm so glad you've had the support of people in your past, like Dr. Jane and your past mentor, but also the people that were in your life at that point when you're producing your thesis work, and you're doing so much that you had a lot of other advisors around who could still, who could say, yes, keep going, you're right, have that stubbornness, and we'll back you on it, keep going. Yeah, it's unusual to have the support, and it's been great that you have, and you're obviously a very stubborn man, so I hope nobody gets in your way.
Yes.
Question for Dennis: How are you sharing hope today? So you're doing a lot with the research and with communicating the story of the apes that you're studying. But a lot of us aren't PhDs and don't have the speaking ability that you have and the connections you have now. So what are you doing as a regular guy every day to share hope?
Okay. As a regular guy, my message is to everybody is that it's not too late. It doesn't matter what you're going through in your family. It doesn't matter if you're climbing a hill that looks so steep. If you believe that you can make a difference, it doesn't matter if anyone else is willing to join you. I would say that in a house full of people, say 10,000 people, it takes one person to stand up, just hoping that another person will. And if you don't want to be that first person, if you sit down because no one is standing up, nobody will stand up. Maybe you are the person who is supposed to ignite the change and stand up. And you must take that opportunity when you feel that it is time. You must stand up and hope that another person will stand up. And it takes one person to stand up, for 10 to eventually stand up, for millions to stand up, and for us to change the world. And what I say is, there are thousands of reasons why I should not have been successful. I was born and raised in one of the most remote corners of Africa. My parents were illiterate. I did not speak any English, as I said before, until I was 7. And I don't think I still speak good English. But for 7 years, I had to trek 2 hours to and from primary school at an early age of 6. And for the most part, walking on bare feet because my parents could not afford shoes. So my story is why you must never allow your difficulties or your challenges to overcome you. My story is why you develop an unwavering patience for the right moment to come. My story is why you believe so much in what is to come that you set forth to grab it. Why in the darkness you keep going, knowing that somewhere you're going to bend a corner, and at that corner you're going to see some light. So you must be stubborn to the voices that ask you to quit. So this is the message that I take along with me. Like wherever I go, I like to be in communities with people who are experiencing all sorts of problems. And instead of just speaking to them about primates, which is what I like talking about, I always want to just know what is happening in their lives and give them courage. Tell them that you never let your fears to overcome your hope. That you see, when Dr. King said, "We shall overcome," it was powerful. It still is. But come to think of it, he was not saying that based on any plan that he had, any promise that has been made. He was not saying that based on any magical vision or any concrete thing, but it was just a belief. He knew that if everybody kept at it, we shall overcome. And in everybody's lives, and in their professional lives, and especially for people who take care of animals, who try to conserve the resources that we have in this world, it's easy to give up. If you see, like 2 years ago, 300 elephants were slaughtered in 1 week in a Cameroonian national park. It's easy to say, you know what, it's over. Many people you come to me and say, you working so hard to protect the Cross River gorillas. I get it that they are probably the most endangered great ape in Africa. But your study and those of others have shown that these animals, they're less than 300 left in the wild. Why not focus on something else? Why not just go and study some animals where there's a reliable chance of survival into the next millennium? My answer is, what if there was just one animal left? Doesn't that animal deserve the right to live in peace for the rest of his life? Should that animal not be cared for because all the others are gone? And it applies to everything else. We just cannot give up. We have to keep fighting and until there's nothing left in us.
Wow. I'm learning a lot. So I think you may have already answered question 5, and that's what are the practical steps that we can take? What would I do next to become a person of hope or to start sharing hope? Mm-hmm. And I just hear you saying so many things that give a lot of action to not giving up, that stubborn determination to keep moving forward even when everybody else says it just won't work. If you know it's right, you need to pursue it.
That's right. That's right.
Do you want to add anything to question 5, or I think you already have answered it? But if I don't want to stop you if you got something else there.
Yeah, I would just say that people should learn to keep their dreams alive, like no matter what, and also support the causes that matters most to you. Sometimes it takes a like on Facebook to promote an idea. I mean, if you can't donate to a cause that you're happy to donate to, but sometimes just adding your own voice, saying a yes, saying that it's true, helps. Right. A like on Facebook, as I say, can support someone who can bring laughter, can bring a moment of joy to someone who is suffering from something. So I think that we should not give up no matter what on the things that are close to our heart. And we should be ready to stand up and fight. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, I'm feeling obviously inspired from your words because you're a great communicator, but also the truth of them. There is so much truth, and we can look back through history and see so many people who've changed the world because they were the one person who stood up in the room and started what everybody else probably knew was right and needed to be done, but everybody else was waiting for somebody to follow.
That's right.
And sometimes you have to be the person to stand up and be the leader.
That's right.
Well, also, you've given us so much information, and you just mentioned Facebook, and I know that was a pure coincidence, because what I want to ask next is, how can we follow you? So do you have a Facebook page or somewhere we can keep up with you and find out what you're doing and find out more about the organization you're serving with, as well as your research?
Actually, I do have a Facebook page. That is mainly just for family.
Okay. Well, I don't want to get involved.
I have a Twitter account.
Great.
And that is where I most likely will post things about my work.
Excellent.
What I'm doing. I've been quiet for a while, but I think I will keep up with that. I just had a new National Geographic grant to go to Africa and study, go back to Cameroon and study crossover gorillas. Actually, I will be looking at the influence of disease and human disturbance on stress hormones by measuring stress hormones in physiques across seasons and in different habitats. I think that would be an interesting thing to do. With the Gorilla Foundation, I will also be leading at the same time, leading some compassionate conservation education activities, exploring how the stories told by Michael, the gorilla that originated from Cameroon, and that was after being taught the American Sign Language, could communicate the nightmares that he was having about his parents being killed in Cameroon to his caregivers 10 years afterwards. I'm going to use this story as a tool to encourage compassion for gorillas. I don't think in the very remote areas, most people, they see animals, rightfully so, if you've ever lived there. They see other animals as food. But if they know a little bit more about the emotions, that these animals do suffer, that they have anxieties, that they have nightmares, that they have feelings, maybe that will change the way they perceive animals. So I'm going to use the stories and other educational material alongside doing the work for the postdoctoral work funded by National Geographic to reach as many people as I can and to inspire some compassion, hoping that that could lead to one gorilla not being killed. And as I said, if one gorilla can be spared, 1 out of the 300, because of the stories I tell, because of my engagement with the local communities, I would die happy, man. So that's what I'm going to be doing, and I will keep up on my Facebook account and hopefully eventually write a blog someday about my work.
And
so on my Twitter account.
Sure, yeah.
My Twitter is at Denis_Ndeloh.
Great. So that's DENIS_NDELOH.
That's correct.
And that's the Twitter handle. So at Dennis Ndeloh.
Yes.
Awesome. And your organization website, where can we find just the organization you're serving with currently?
Now I'm serving as the Director of African Field Conservation at the Gorilla Foundation, coco.org. And you can read, I think I have a CV and a biography page on that website.
Mm-hmm. Great.
that you can go to.
We'll link
And you
that.
can,
We'll put that on the show notes page here at isharehope.com as well, along with your other links. And what were you going to say? It was another one?
yeah, and I was just saying that if you want to, anybody listening want to reach out to me and let's discuss how we can protect more species or spread hope around the world, you can also send me an email. My email is nndeloh@gmail.com.
nndeloh@gmail.com.
That's correct.
Perfect. We'll put that on the show notes page as well.
Okay.
Wow. Great information. Okay, so Dennis, here's where we take a quick break. Let's need a few quotes from you. Each of the guests that sets up the interview, we get a quote out of the middle of your interview somewhere, and then you'll hear the guest say, "I'm so and so, and I share hope," or "I'm so and so, and this is what I do for a living," or "in my research," or whatever, and I share hope. So I need your name. This is your quote. I'll record it. Just your name,
Okay.
what you do, and I share hope at the very end.
All right. Okay. So we should do this after 1 minute?
Oh, you can go ahead and do it now. I'll record
Okay.
it, and I'll get a couple of takes, and we'll get the right one.
All right. I am Denis Ndeloh, Cameroonian primatologist, and I share hope.
That's fantastic. Try one, the same thing, but Cameroonian primatologist studying the certain apes or wherever. I want to make sure people who don't maybe connect to primatologists, I want to make sure they understand it's the study of apes or the apes in that one region, or
Okay.
Got it.
I am Denis Ndeloh. I study cross-river gorillas, and I share hope.
That's good too. Awesome. That's great. Man, you're really a really good communicator. You realize that?
Okay.
Like,
Thanks.
you speak very powerfully. It's really great to hear you.
Thanks.
All right, a couple of random questions. I just can't help but ask. So, you're growing up in the forested areas in Cameroon, and you have, did you say 18 of you? So is there 16 children?
13.
13.
Yes.
13 of you. Wow. And your father was very focused on education. And yet he didn't have a formal education at all. How did he find out? What triggered his mind to think, I need to let my kids go for a 2-hour walk each way to school?
I think he had heard from people, he had heard both sides of the stories. His father stopped and will aggressively prevent his children from running away from home to go to school because he had sent his first child to school, and when that child graduated from school, he was so elitist that he disregarded his father. So he, in those days, like, parents were very powerful. I mean, like, he said none of his children would go to school from then on. They never did. So my father had died, but he also had heard and seen people who go to school and come back to help their parents. And it was a huge investment. I should send them, I should work very hard. So he had to take up hunting, carpenting as well. He was a carpenter, at a farmer at the same time, doing these 3 jobs just to make sure that he, as long as the child does not fail the exam, he's going to go to school. So he must have, I never actually got to ask him who inspired him, because it could not be from his experience, because he didn't go to school, he could not read or write. But he believed that education is the future. That he could no longer, and all his friends around, none of them was taking that First, when you send your children to school, it means that they are not they're not going with you to the farm. They're not going with you to the forest. And so you have to do all the hard work alone. So, but he was inspired by somebody, I think, or was just his own thinking that no, I better defy my father. My father didn't send me to school. I believe that if I did go to school, I would have been a better person. But I don't want my children to say the same thing about me. And he sent all of us to school. I mean, and the family is very successful. The least person in our household has a first degree. And that is one in 1,000 in the area where we come from.
13 children, and all of you have at least one degree.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it is.
Wow. From one of the most remote places in Africa,
Okay.
and parents who did not have an education.
That's right.
And I can't help but notice the irony of a father who had to become a poacher and able to support and pay for his children's education, which in turn generated a researcher for primates.
Yes. Yeah. And then people say that Africans hunters are criminals. I say we should stop criminalizing them, but work with them for solutions. That would never hurt.
You know, I've noticed that with many other conversations we've had with people around the world. Sometimes the things that happen, like poaching, for instance. You know, would you kill an animal to feed your children? Yeah, you do what you have to do, and
Yes.
that's often the situation. It's just from a distance we can point fingers, but when you're up close and personal, you realize there's more to this story. How can we help that person feed their children another way?
Yes, and also there has been another mistake that people do is some of these livelihoods are rooted in culture. And you must take a more holistic approach to, I mean, I've seen projects that say, okay, you know what? Hunters are hunting because their children need to go to school, they need to feed their families. So let's convert them to fishermen. Let's build ponds and give them the resources to fish. And they will to become artisanal farmers, and they will eventually not hunt. Okay? So you come one day with all the resources. You know, projects have a timeline. They have to finish within 2 or 3 years. So you just come in day 1, meeting, day 2, you start fishing, day 3, you have to start getting money, day 4, you stop hunting. It doesn't go like that. Just people, some of these hunting practices will never leave the people. They will always hunt because that is who they are. Because being in the solitude of nature sometimes is the medication that they need for their illnesses. Being out there in nature and hunting is what gives life a purpose for them. And you must walk through this intricate, complex web of root causes in order to find a solution. That is why instead of saying not hunting, let's make them empathize, at least the animals that we want them not to hunt. To understand with us why hunting all the animals today will mean that your children do not have anything to hunt in the future. It should not always be that because it's a criminal. It's a criminal act. It is punishable by law. These people are not illiterate. They don't know what is endangered. Endangered means nothing to an illiterate person.
Great points. Great points. Well, I tell you, I could translate that same methodology and mentality towards any other people group anywhere, even in my own community, by just, it's walking a mile in their shoes and learning what their culture and what their thoughts and beliefs, all that is, it just doesn't make sense to me, so I judge it. But no, get a little bit into their shoes and see what it's like. All right, another question. You're out there in the forest a lot. When are you just completely scared? So there's a lot of people listening to this that would never venture into a forest. there's snakes and there's wild animals and there's crazy noises all night long. Is there anything out there that just makes you kind of get goosebumps and say, whew, I don't like that?
No, on the contrary. Each day I sleep and all the noises I hear at cars and trains passing by, I dream of a night in nature, just sleeping there under the tree and believing that no animal out there really comes to get you unless it's provoked. I have stepped on snakes. Of course, you have to be careful. Of course, I wear boots that at least cover some part of my foot when I'm in the forest. But I've never seen a snake that instead of running away is running towards me. Right. And this is just a misconception that snakes are evil. They will just come and bite you. No. Biting for snakes, as in any other animal, is in self-defense. Gorillas have charged at me, yes. Because I study wild gorillas. These are not the ones in the zoo that know that people come around. These are gorillas that once you step into their territory, the silverback wants to eat you up just to protect the family. Just as you will do if somebody is knocking on your door in the night, and in order to protect the family, you're going to come out and confront that person.
Right.
I have gone through that. I've gone through, like the terrain where cross-river gorillas exist is very steep. It's one of the most rocky areas you can think of. So the fear is not even of animals, it's of falling from a cliff.
Sure, wow.
Because sometimes you just have to go by some vines down the forest floor or some roots. And if you're following a gorilla trail and you see gorillas do that, you have to trust that if with their massive weight, that thing didn't break, it will not break if you do it. And you just have to do it. You just trust that. And trusting other species, that's not just humans, gives you another sense of belonging in nature, you know? So it's exciting. I mean, each time when you stay in the forest for 2 months and you're going out, of course you're tired. You want to sleep in a proper bed, not on a mat every day. But once you're out there 2 to 3 days, you start missing it. You want to be back there. It is that drive that makes you to succeed. That is why I often feel very bad for my field assistants. Because more often than not, they are working for the money, which is nothing compared to what they do. I'm working from the heart. I don't need money to do it. But they're doing it for the money. And it can be very difficult. Given that we have to track 10 hours a day continuously, if you're on a good gorilla trail and you're collecting data about your feeding ecology, you don't want to lose them. So you have to stay behind them. And believe me, they can go for more than 2 kilometers on a day, on a winding, rocky cliff.
Wow.
And you just have to follow.
Wow.
And if you do that every day, the more you follow them, the more you move away from your base camp, the longer the distance it takes to get there and to get back. And you see these guys sometimes really tired.
So, next question, last question for me. What music do you like to listen to? If you're gonna put something in your headphones while you're on a plane or in a car or out in the forest, and you just want to lighten your spirits up a little bit, feel a little happier, what's your favorite music? Anybody in the world, doesn't matter. What's your favorite?
My favorite musician is actually a lady. It's Celine Dion.
Celine Dion, really?
Yeah,
I love it. And any certain song that you love? She has a beautiful voice.
I love so many of them. Like, I really don't. They are. The Power of Love is also one of them.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, it's a good one. And
so, have you ever met her?
no, I plan to. I came to Canada last year when she was. She's not doing a lot of performance at this time because I think she's taking care of her husband or something like that.
Right.
When she start making concerts, I'll definitely find the cash to go. I'd really love to meet her. She's full of energy. And I like
is.
that.
Yeah.
And when she sings, she's full of energy.
I know. You can feel her heart.
Yeah,
you really can.
You can feel her heart. You can feel that she's singing from her heart.
Yeah. I love it. She's a great artist. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Well, Denis Ndeloh, you have been a privilege to talk to. Can't imagine any more fun conversation than this. A guy who gets to spend his life researching the great primates of the world, and in particular a group of 300 that are the last remaining of their type, and 500 and keep them climbing.
Hopefully
so. Dennis, thanks for your time. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Have a great day.
You too.
All right. Bye.
You've just listened to I Share Hope. If you're ready to make a change, head to our website at isharehope.com and claim your free copy of the Top 10 Actions of Hope from World Leaders to use hope in your own life. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.